Thank you. Thank you for joining for this webinar that we're doing. I guess just to get started, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the plan overall, so you'll know what to expect as far as the structure of this. At the very beginning, the first couple minutes, we'll talk a little bit about the current challenges that a lot of educators face when working with striving readers. Then we'll talk some about the theory and research behind ways to kind of combat those challenges. And after that, I'm going to give some sort of practical examples of things that you can do in your classrooms and outside of your classrooms, just to kind of keep you current and helping as much as we can to combat any issues that we might be facing and how we can use trade books to do that. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to get support from across the district and go over some of the references that were used in the creation of this. Because a lot of this, what you're going to see up on your screen, they're mostly not my words. These are just sort of expert advice and research from names that you would recognize from the literacy education world: Donald Miller, Pernille Rip, Reggie Routman, Richard Allington, and there's others. So I think Julie said, but just to kind of reiterate, the slides will be available to you afterwards. So just know that you'll have these resources if you would like them to refer back. So to sort of just start out, the idea of reaching striving readers and what the challenges we face right now are, just kind of generally, we all know how difficult it is to provide differentiated instruction to an entire classroom of students. And when we add striving readers into that mix, that's just sort of one more thing that we want to make sure we're targeting as much as we can, but with a limited amount of time and resources, you know, just having as many easy ways of making this happen is better for everyone. So we know that adding phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension strategies are things that are good and useful and necessary to help with those kind of more basic reading skills. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're not doing that and isolating the more fun, engaged, kind of classroom fun reading that they get to participate in. And while we're doing all these things, we still have to think about working within the parameters that are set up for us by our schools, our districts, and our state mandated programs. So kind of taking into consideration all of these different elements and what we can do to kind of boost engagement within this framework. So the idea of reaching striving readers, where do you start? Intervention programs are typically the first step for a lot of schools and districts that have a significant percentage of students that they would consider striving readers. And this is a good thing. Intervention programs can be very helpful in making progress. There are a lot of different types of intervention programs, so maybe you're using one that's more online or computer-based, or maybe yours is more hands-on or oral. There's a lot of different options, but some of the challenges or pitfalls of them are kind of universal between programs. Another thing that is sort of a universal truth is that most of us working in the world of education care very deeply about our work and our impact. Each of us has a different role to play, so we come at this from a different perspective, but all of us care very much about what we do and want to help make the best experience possible for all of our students. So with that in mind, we know reading intervention programs are necessary or helpful, but we don't want to just leave it at that. We want to kind of make as many efforts as we can at bolstering engagement and keeping our students wanting to read. So the idea of relying on commercial reading programs entirely shortchanges students and teachers. This is a quote from Reggie Routman. This is one of the professional development book resources that is a great source for a lot of this information. Just the idea that we need to always remember to keep in mind a need for flexibility, balance, and a holistic evaluation, as opposed to just relying entirely on a commercial reading program. So kind of along those lines, the pitfalls of a reading intervention. Phonics, reading comprehension strategies, and other targeted skills practice are very important, obviously, for striving readers, but this in itself isn't enough to help them make significant gains, and it's certainly not enough to keep them motivated and wanting to read. So we just kind of need to keep in mind that we have to keep going with these sort of basic skills, but not let that be the only thing. So that being said, in addition to a reading intervention program, students need books. The idea of capturing motivation and making reading appealing is so important. As much as we can, we want to surround our students with a variety of levels and topics of books so they truly want to read them. Because they want the information or engagement. So it's sort of the idea of not manufacturing this experience, but making it an organic, they find something they're interested in that is at the right level for them, and then that fosters motivation for them. Often students in reading interventions end up missing out on a lot of their regular in-class free reading time since the intervention is seen as a priority. They miss out on opportunities to read for enjoyment or to become part of the classroom reading community, which kind of takes the fun out of it. So we just need to make sure we're always aware of that issue and kind of minimizing it as much as we can. One thing we can do to combat that is that we want to keep the volume of reading as high as we can. We want to give them opportunities for practice. We want to give them high success experiences with their reading, and the best way to do this is make sure that we're in school, in class, in as many places as we can, giving them opportunities to read things that they want to read. In fact, in a meta-analysis of over 50 reading research studies, Stephen Krashen found that the single greatest factor in reading achievement, even above socioeconomics, was reading volume, how much reading people do. So we can kind of, again, look at this as interventions, not just the typical commercial intervention, but the idea of an intervention with reading should be synonymous with voluminous, authentic reading using the most engaging texts available. So kind of keeping these principles in mind, what things can we do to foster this type of reading that we know is such an important aspect of it? Well, we want to make sure that we're giving access to quality books that students want to read. We want to give opportunities to read books of their own choosing. We want to provide an environment that's conducive to an enjoyable reading experience. And we also want to make sure we're giving a sense of being part of a community of readers. The first one of those, access. Access is so important. Removing any barriers between striving readers and books increases their likelihood to engage. Researchers and classroom teachers agree on this. Pernille Ripp and Richard Ellington have some words of wisdom here. Essentially, we want to make sure that we can keep the books close. So classroom libraries are huge, if at all possible. Being able to provide books that students can take home is huge. Not just trips to the library, whether it's school or the community, are great, but keeping the books visible and around all the time is a big key to making it to removing barriers. The second one is providing opportunities for choice. We want to provide choice as much as we're able. Again, keeping in mind that in certain districts or schools, this is just kind of not as much of an option, but as much as we can do it, we want to provide choice. This one seems intuitive and makes sense, but it's also supported by research. In her latest book, Donnell & Miller reminds us that achievement is driven by interest. We are more likely to engage in activities when we find them personally meaningful. So, obviously we know that that's true for our own day-to-day activities. When it comes to striving readers and trying to make sure they're getting as much reading as we want them to get that good volume and good practice, we want to give them the choice to read something that appeals to them. Also, fostering a sense of community is key. There's great power in teachers and students sharing of books and recommending, talking, and writing about books to and with each other, because for many students, this is their only gateway into the reading club. This idea of creating a network and providing opportunities for interactions surrounding books needs to be proactively implemented by us, by the educators. As an administrator, teacher, or consultant, we need to create ways to build this community. It's not something that necessarily happens on its own. In certain classrooms it does, for sure, but when we're dealing with newer readers or people who are less comfortable with books, we need to just put as many steps in place as possible to make this happen. We want to create an environment that's conducive to an enjoyable reading experience. Part of the idea of having high success reading is just doing everything we can to make it better, more enjoyable, more fun, more natural. Some of us are lucky enough in elementary classrooms where we can create a dream reading nook. Maybe we have really great bookshelves and pillows and quotes that are inspirational, and it's just very inviting, and that's fantastic. That's also not a reality for everyone. So in as many opportunities as we can, we want to take these little steps to make it better. There are things we can do, like inviting students to bring a pillow or stuffed animal to have a read-in one day, maybe once a quarter, maybe once every couple of weeks, maybe as a treat that they've earned. This just makes it more fun. It gives them something to look forward to. Organizing a classroom library is another great thing to kind of just keep the environment as nice as possible. Making sure things are rearranged every few months so that maybe not everything is visible all the time, and we change this out every couple of months so they have an opportunity to look at some of the books you have that they haven't seen in a while. Whenever it's possible, refreshing the classroom library, whether it's asking for donations from parents or community members, or it's using grant money to buy new books or swapping them with another classroom. All kinds of different ideas to just bring in new things kind of keeps that engagement high. Grouping books so that students can easily find what they want is another huge help. If a student already knows that they like a certain series, whether it's something like Owl Diaries, Magic Tree House, Percy Jackson, if they know that they can go find the next book in that series or a different book in that series, that's huge for them. Displaying favorite titles prominently is another useful little tip. Just kind of keeps that conversation going. If there was a read aloud that everyone in class liked, and we can kind of keep that title displayed, or if there's a book a lot of people have taken home and liked, then maybe that will encourage some other students to check it out. The last kind of practical tip here, including a book quote or discussion question on your wall or smartboard. This is one of those things that just helps bring books to the forefront of every aspect of classroom life. Instead of just at free reading time, we have quotes on the walls of our conference rooms here at work, and it's just sort of a fun way to kind of have that connection to books lasting throughout your day. Setting up comfortable spots away from desks and tables where students can read is another easy little tip. Having them sit at their desks or tables is important and does lend itself to structure. And in a classroom, that's obviously something that is kind of necessary. But giving that opportunity to get comfortable, especially when it's free reading time, makes for a much more organic experience, and it makes it enjoyable for the students. So putting it all together. Some of these things that we've talked about are on this list, but this is just kind of a handful of practical strategies to begin or further the practices and ideas that we've touched on in those theories. Many of you are probably already doing a lot of these and have others that you could share. Every one of these things will help create a better, more exciting, more supported experience. I'm gonna link to a couple of these just to kind of give a little preview. We won't go through them in detail, but these again are hyperlinked in the presentation that you'll get. So if you want just an easy, practical website to go to, you can find it here. One that I love that I read in this Game Changer book by Donalyn Miller. It's not hers, it's a different resource that she was citing. Just this idea of walking around with a book. So whenever you're going to, if you're in the cafeteria or you're just walking through the hallways, if you carry around just like a very recognizable, very favorite book, along with your papers or clipboard or other things, it's just a great way to, again, keep that conversation going about books. Instead of just isolating to free reading time, if I walk around carrying this Percy Jackson book, maybe it sparks a conversation with a student who this was one of their favorite books and it's not somebody I talk to often. It's just that, again, that idea of creating a reading community and making that experience a little bit more authentic and fun for the students. And if a student hasn't read this book and they see me with this book, maybe it's a great way to get a conversation going with them so they know that this might be something they like. We can talk about a couple of my favorite aspects of it, the fact that it has Greek gods, and I think that's something fun to read about, and they're just sort of woven into the story here. So that's one sort of fun way to kind of just keep that engagement going. The idea of never stopping read alouds, no matter what grade you're in, it's just such a nice, easy way to keep books at the forefront. I have a blog post linked here, and this is from our internal Booksource blog. It's just 8 reasons read alouds are perfect every day for any grade. So you can read a little bit more about that here. Using books to enhance socio-emotional learning or mental health, there's a blog post about that. The idea of hosting a read-in, which we talked a little bit about before. Implementing book clubs in your classroom. Again, this is one of those things that a lot of us are probably already doing, but there are ways to make these things more engaging, easier, more fun. And along those lines of book clubs and some of these other ideas, we have some printables for you to be able to access after the webinar is over. This link will be available to you, and once you go there, you can download these 3 different resources. One of them is a guide of book club discussion questions. So maybe you already have book clubs in your classroom, but just sort of printing out this fun book club discussion questionnaire. And these are printed on 2 on a sheet, so you can cut them out. You can use them as bookmarks and discussion questions. If you have middle grade students, giving these book club discussion questions to them and kind of making them a little bit self-sufficient is a fun idea. We have this sort of book review sheet that we've created that students can use to recommend books to their peers. There's an opportunity on this one for them to draw a picture of the main character if they'd like. They can write what they loved about the book. They can give it a rating. It's just a little bit more fun and interactive than asking to write a book report or asking for 2 sentences or 3 sentences. Ideally, you could maybe print these out and have a binder of them, and then students can go look through when they want something new to read. And then the third downloadable that we will have for you is just to keep students engaged with what other people are reading, to keep that conversation going about books. If you wanted to, for every teacher, for every student, give one of these where they just write their name in the box, they write what they're currently reading, and then again, that's an easy way to kind of keep the community going and keep conversation very easy among students about books. And in addition to these printable giveaways, we have for one lucky webinar viewer, if you're watching this live, we're going to give a $200 gift certificate to be used towards books of your choosing, whether that's one of our great collections or books that you have on your list already, or you want us to put something together based around any themes, we can do that too. And so this is for Desiree from Rocky Boy School in Montana. If you're watching and you would like to send us a chat with how to get in touch with you, we would love to be able to give you that gift certificate. So please contact us. Okay, so then in addition to these practical in-class things, I have some resources listed here that are external for you to consult. So maybe this isn't part of your in-class, maybe this is just when you are outside of school and you get on social media or you get online or you listen to podcasts. These are some easy ways to just keep books and book-related topics forefront for you. And by doing that, you're doing two things. You're giving yourself the opportunity to kind of easily stay current on new titles that you might be able to talk to your students about. But even if you're not kind of focused on titles for your students and you're just interested in keeping current about local events or book-related things that kind of match your personal interests more so than those of your students, you're still then modeling a great behavior for your students to kind of take after. So these ideas are a mix. Most of these are more geared towards student reading choices. But one example here, let's see, the Book Riot is a great resource. I'm going to pull up their website here, but this is one that I subscribe to their emails at work here. So probably, I think you can maybe choose your frequency. I think I get these at least once a day. They're all book-related things. They're not necessarily just reviews of books. There's a list here of 25 books that are good for kids with anxiety. And on that list, some are picture books, some are middle grade, some are YA. So you can find some great information there. There's, I think this was the one earlier I was looking, and there were Harry Potter themed escape rooms. So it's just all kinds of book related things. It is book reviews, it is fun crafts with books. I think there was something with cross stitch. Just all kinds of great ways to just kind of keep yourself immersed in the world of books. And when you're immersed in the world of books, you talk about that to your students, then they become immersed in the world of books. Also on here, I have a couple of podcasts. I'm not going to pull those up because we won't listen to one of those right now. Pernille Rip's website and blogs are great. She's a big proponent of making sure that you have lots of opportunities for your students to get access and choice to books. So she's got some things here in her latest post about picture books for Women's History Month, and she is pretty prolific. She'll post often, so this is a great one to keep up with and to keep yourself current, and it's just an easy place to turn. And then over here, I have a list of different entities that you can follow. Whoops, let me get back to that. There we go. Who you can follow on social media. So depending on what your preferred social media is, you can kind of just look these up on your own to see what works best for you. Booksource, we have a presence on Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram and Twitter. There are favorite authors you can follow. So whether it's your favorite author or it's your student's favorite author, either one is good. I am a big fan of Leanne Moriarty. I just finished her latest book, so I follow her on my social media. You might want to follow someone like Jacqueline Woodson, who's a great K-12 author with a lot of popular titles, and they'll just kind of keep things at the forefront that you might want to know about. Other than authors, you might follow larger publishing houses like Chronicle or Harper. I think Lee and Low is a great one. That's actually one of the links in an earlier resource I have. So those are just some ideas of things that you can do to like keep yourself knowledgeable. And then in addition to just kind of making this part of your everyday, in a lot of areas of life, we hear that phrase, or we use that phrase, it takes a village. I would say this is one of those areas. Being a teacher, being an administrator is sort of a never-ending job. There's always more that you can do. So while it's great to have these ideas, finding the time to implement them is something that is probably a challenge. So knowing that you can just sort of outsource some of these things is a great idea as well. So Booksource, that's who you're seeing here. These are our literacy accounts managers, and they are a fantastic, knowledgeable team that we have here in-house. A lot of them are former educators themselves. They are very knowledgeable on current trends, and they can match interest levels and subjects to whatever your needs might be. So if you have specific things on your curriculum that you need to find books to teach third grade Civil War or STEM for high school, you can give your request just like that to them, and they will put together something fantastic for you. And they love to do it, and they all sit right here in our office. So if you would like to call or email them, they're happy to help. It's a no obligation quote, so it really is just their expertise, and they're willing to put that out for you. In addition to that, we also employ at Booksource a collection development department, and they are like, they're our in-house librarians. They really are experts at what they do. They're knowledgeable on current titles and trends, and they also know a ton about leveling systems and which ones work best and how and why. And they use all of that expertise to kind of put together our pre-built collections. So they've already done a lot of this work, and you can find collections that match a lot of different needs. My second resource here is sharing responsibilities among grade level teachers. So if you're part of a teaching team, there's maybe 3 or 4 teachers in your grade. If you can kind of come up with some sort of schedule where you rotate weeks or months, and every month it's a different teacher's turn to maybe bring 6 new titles in that they're gonna explain kind of the basics of, and who might like them, and what the story encompasses. And then they can either share that to all the students, or they can kind of keep the other teachers posted, and then each teacher presents them to the students. That way you don't have to feel overwhelmed trying to stay current with titles and bring in all kinds of reading for yourself to do, and then the extra work that comes along with that. It's just an easier way to divide it up. And then the third idea, involving your community. So if you have the option, relying on parents to help you staying current with titles is, again, such like a nice way to involve them, to keep everyone excited. It takes something off your list. And then you could have a parent maybe once a month come in and do a title presentation about a couple of different titles. You could just have them email you. You could have them submit it over video. There's all kinds of different ways that you can just sort of, you know, parcel these things out and not have to keep it all as one more thing that you have to do. And then the other thing with the community, if you have other community volunteers, that's also fantastic. Otherwise, school librarians and community librarians are a huge resource too. So those are all great places that you can turn to kind of take some of the load off of you. So this one, garnering support from across the district, just kind of keeping in mind that we know the world we're living in is very data driven, and everybody kind of needs research to support what they want to have happen, because you're not probably going to get a district-wide buy-in unless you have something showing that this is a proven and effective method. So these resources do exist for just simply this idea of making sure we're fostering engagement, making sure we're keeping students motivated. One of those is a guide that we have come out with that will give you instructions how to download. It's Book Access and Choice as primary factors contributing to reading improvement. And again, this is put together with expert research. These are some of the references that I used to create the presentation. So I think I held one up earlier, the Donnell & Miller and Colby Sharp. This is another great one, this From Striving to Thriving. These have all kinds of just little chunks of information that are very usable, and they're great to have around.
I'm swooping back in, here I come. Well, first of all, thank you, Melissa. We're so happy to have you, and we're so lucky that you could share your time and talents with us. Because I forgot to say it earlier, Melissa is our, let me make sure I get this right, market insight specialist.
That's me.
And basically what she does is, she does many things, but one of them is to sort of keep her ear to the ground, to keep in touch with new trends, new developments that are happening in our industry. And she assists our sales consultants to be up to date with those things. And so while our sales consultants might be familiar with them, I think we're really lucky that she's able to come here and talk to you guys today. So thanks again.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. So on your screen in front of you, you'll see that there's a few links. Like Melissa said, certainly go download that free guide to the research about why it matters, why choice matters, why independent reading matters. It's one of those things that teachers everywhere would tell you, like, duh, yes, it matters, but sometimes you need that ammunition to have research and back yourself up. You can also visit booksource.com/striving-readers-printables to download your free printables. Like Melissa said, I really like that cute little, like, what am I reading sticker. I think that's really cute, and I'm gonna get one today. And if you have any other questions, I know the comments have been a little quiet, and that's fine, you guys are busy. If you have any questions, if you think of anything that comes up, don't hesitate to contact us at literacy@booksource.com. So once again, that's literacy@booksource.com. That goes straight to our literacy account managers. Those are the real experts who are going to hook you up with some good book recommendations. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to talk to you. And is there anything else I'm forgetting?
I don't think so.
All right.
Thank
Well, thanks very much. Have a good day.
And meeting.
Nailed it.